My name is Haley Parker. I'm 29 years old, and on the night I launched the company I built from nothing, I watched every chair I had reserved for my family stay empty. Not one late arrival. Not one embarrassed wave from the door. Not even a text saying, "We're proud of you." Just 12 empty seats under a small gold sign that said reserved for family, while across town my brother Brian was hosting a poker night my mother called important for his confidence. I had spent 3 years turning an idea into Clear Path Living, a company that redesigned homes for seniors and disabled adults using smart safety systems, fall detection flooring, voice-controlled lighting, and custom mobility layouts. That night was supposed to prove I wasn't just the helpful daughter they called when something broke. I was a founder. I was the person who had built something real. But as guests walked through the showroom, touching the demo railings and testing the emergency response panels, I kept glancing at those empty seats like a fool. Then my phone lit up with a photo from my mother. Brian grinning over a poker table, chips stacked in front of him, with the caption, "Family night. He needed us." I turned the phone face down, smiled for the room, and finished my presentation with my hands shaking. After the last guest left, I locked the showroom alone. That was when a stranger in a charcoal suit stepped out from near the entrance, shook my hand, and said, "Ms. Parker, we want to invest $600,000. Before I tell you what he said next, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The man's name was Marcus Reed, and he didn't speak like someone throwing compliments around just to be polite. He spoke like he had already done the math. He told me he represented a small private investment group focused on aging-in-place technology, and he had been watching Clear Path Living for months through local business grants, community health forums, and one article I didn't even know had been published about my pilot project with 2 retired nurses. "You're solving a real problem," he said, looking through the glass wall at my showroom, where the soft light still reflected off the demo kitchen with lowered counters and automatic shut-off burners. "Most companies sell gadgets. You're building dignity into people's homes." I should have felt only joy. I should have cried from relief. Instead, my chest felt split in two, because the one night strangers understood me was the same night my family proved they didn't. Marcus asked if I had a few minutes to talk. I almost said no because my eyes were burning, my feet hurt, and I had spent the entire evening pretending the empty family table did not feel like a public humiliation. But then I thought of my mother's picture, Brian's poker chips, and the words, "He needed us." So I nodded and let Marcus walk me back inside. We sat at the consultation table I had designed for families planning home modifications for aging parents, and he asked questions that nobody in my family had ever asked. How did I calculate installation cost? What was my client acquisition plan? How would I train contractors to treat disabled clients with respect instead of pity? Did I intend to license the software or keep operations local? For 40 minutes, I forgot the ache in my throat. I was not Linda Parker's overlooked daughter. I was not Brian Parker's backup plan. I was a business owner answering real questions about a real future. At the end, Marcus placed a card on the table and said, "I want you to sleep on this. Tomorrow morning, call me. If your numbers hold up, we can move quickly." When he left, the showroom was quiet enough for me to hear the hum of the emergency demo panel on the wall. I picked up my phone, expecting maybe one late apology from my mother. Nothing. No missed calls. No messages from the people who had promised they would be in the front row. Just that photo again. Brian smiling like he had won something. I drove home through empty streets with Marcus's card on the passenger seat and my family's silence sitting heavier than any rejection letter I had ever received. I didn't sleep much. I sat at my kitchen table, still wearing my launch blazer, and opened the folder where I kept old notes from the first year of ClearPath. Back then, I was working full-time as an occupational therapy assistant, spending lunch breaks sketching safer bathrooms and evenings interviewing caregivers. My mother used to call it, "your little side thing." Brian called it, "that grab bar business." Every time the family needed me to install a camera, fix a phone, drive mom to an appointment, or help Brian organize paperwork, I showed up. Every time I needed them to show up for me, there was an excuse. At 6:12 the next morning, my phone began vibrating against the table. One missed call became 8. 8 became 23. By the time the coffee machine beeped, I had 76 missed calls, 18 texts, and one voicemail from my mother that started with a sweetness I recognized immediately as panic. "Haley, honey, call me back. We heard something amazing happen last night. We need to talk as a family." I stared at the word family until it stopped looking real. They hadn't needed to talk when the seats were empty. They hadn't needed to talk when I stood under bright showroom lights explaining my life's work to strangers. They needed to talk after the money news. And that was the first moment I understood something important. Their absence had hurt me, but their sudden interest offended me even more. I didn't call back. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and began preparing the cleanest investor packet I had ever created. If Marcus Reed wanted numbers, I would give him numbers that could stand in court. Projected revenue, contractor margins, client retention, subscription service tiers, installation timelines, liability protections, staffing requirements, expansion into 3 neighboring counties. Every line polished until there was no room for anyone to dismiss ClearPath Living as my little side thing. My phone kept lighting up beside me. Mom, Brian, Aunt Carol, Mom again. Then a text from Brian appeared. "Sis, huge news. Mom says some investor is interested. That's insane. Call me. We should celebrate." Celebrate? That word almost made me laugh. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, then deleted that too. The message I wanted to send was not polite. I wanted to ask him if he celebrated while I stood in front of 12 empty chairs. I wanted to ask my mother whether Brian's poker night still needed the whole family, or whether $600,000 had suddenly made my dream worthy of attendance. Instead, I put my phone on silent and kept working. There was an old habit inside me, one I had carried since childhood, that whispered, "Don't make things uncomfortable. Be the bigger person. Keep the peace." But peace in my family usually meant I stayed quiet while they took whatever they wanted from me. Peace meant I understood when they forgot my birthday, because Brian had a bad week. Peace meant I smiled when Mom introduced him as my successful one, and me as the dependable one. Peace meant I became useful enough to keep around, but never important enough to celebrate. That morning, with investor documents open in front of me, I realized I was done paying for peace with pieces of myself. Around 10, Marcus called. His voice was calm and direct. "How are you feeling after last night?" he asked. It was such a simple question that it nearly broke me. Not, "Did you get the money?" Not, "Can we be involved?" Not, "Why didn't you call your mother?" Just, "How are you feeling?" I told him the truth, but only the professional part of it. I said I was tired, focused, and ready. He asked if I could meet that afternoon at his office downtown. I said yes before fear had a chance to interrupt. "Bring your operating model, your client acquisition plan, and anything that shows why you're the right person to scale this," he said. "Not just the idea, you." After we hung up, I stood in my small kitchen and looked around at the life I had built without applause. The second-hand table where I paid bills, the wall calendar full of client consultations, the stack of thank you cards from families whose homes I had changed. One card from a woman named Mrs. Alvarez said, "You gave my husband the hallway back." That sentence mattered more than every empty chair from the night before. I packed the cards into my folder because Marcus needed to understand the heart of the business, not just the numbers. Then my phone buzzed again with a voicemail transcript from Mom. "Haley, this is getting childish. You know Brian's night was planned first. But now that investors are involved, we all need to make sure you handle this correctly." I read that sentence 3 times. We all need to make sure. There it was. Not pride, not apology. Control. I walked to my closet, pulled out my navy suit, and made a decision so quiet it felt dangerous. I would take the meeting. I would protect my company. And if my family came asking for a place at the table after leaving every seat empty, they would learn the difference between being related to the founder and being owed by her. Marcus's office was on the 9th floor of a renovated brick building downtown, the kind with exposed beams, glass conference rooms, and people who spoke quickly because they were used to money moving at the speed of confidence. I arrived 15 minutes early, not because I was calm, but because being early was the only way I knew to keep anxiety from driving. In the elevator, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was Brian. "I'm downstairs. Don't go in until we talk." My stomach dropped. I looked at the screen, then at the elevator numbers climbing. 6, 7, 8. I did not reply. When the doors opened, Marcus's assistant greeted me and led me into a conference room where the city stretched behind the windows like a test I had finally studied for. Marcus came in with 2 partners, Elena Brooks and David Chen, both sharp-eyed and kind in the way serious people can be kind when they respect your time. For the first 20 minutes, I forgot Brian was downstairs. I walked them through ClearPath's model. Free safety assessments subsidized by premium installations, partnerships with rehabilitation clinics, subscription monitoring for families, certified contractor training, and an app that allowed adult children to check non-invasive safety alerts without turning their parents' homes into surveillance cages. Elena asked hard questions about liability. David challenged my growth timeline. Marcus watched quietly as I answered every question without shrinking. Then the glass door opened behind me. Brian stepped in wearing a blazer he only used when he wanted to look responsible. His face carried that practiced mixture of charm and concern that had worked on our mother for years. "Sorry," he said, smiling at the room like he belonged there. "I'm Brian Parker, Haley's brother. I didn't want her making big decisions without family input." The silence that followed was so sharp I felt it cut through 10 years of excuses. Marcus looked at me, not Brian. "Ms. Parker, is Mr. Parker part of ClearPath Living?" "No," I said. My voice did not shake. "He has no role in the company." Brian's smile tightened. "Technically, I helped inspire some of this. Our mom's house, family experience, all that. I just want to make sure nobody takes advantage of her." I almost admired how quickly he turned my work into a family asset. Elena folded her hands. "Mr. Parker, this is a private meeting." Brian looked at me then, and for 1 second I saw the real emotion underneath the performance. Not guilt. Fear. He knew something I didn't yet. "Haley," he said softly. "Please. Mom needs you. I need you. Just 5 minutes." Every person in the room waited. I could have exploded. I could have told them how he had chosen poker over my launch. I could have embarrassed him the way his entrance embarrassed me. But I had learned from years of being underestimated that silence, used correctly, could be sharper than anger. I turned to Marcus and said, "May we take a short break?" 2 minutes. Marcus nodded. 2 minutes. I walked Brian into the hallway, closed the door behind us, and before I could speak, he whispered, "You can't sign anything without me." I stared at him. "Excuse me?" He swallowed hard. Mom told people last night that ClearPath was a family venture. She said I was advising you on growth. Some of my friends were there. One of them knows Marcus's group. The news is spreading. If you cut us out now, it makes us look like liars. For a moment, I honestly could not breathe. They had not come to support me. They had not come to apologize. They had come because while I was locking up alone, they were already claiming my work in a room full of poker chips and cheap whiskey. So this is about your reputation, I said. Brian flinched. It's about family. No, I said. It's about you using that word whenever consequences arrive. His face hardened. Don't act like you built this completely alone. Mom let you stay in her house after college. I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because the audacity needed air. For 6 weeks, Brian, while I paid rent. He stepped closer. Haley, be smart. Investors like family stories. Let us stand beside you. We can all win. And there it was. The offer my family had always considered generous. Let them take credit, and they would call it love. I looked through the glass wall at the conference room where 3 people were waiting to discuss my future. Then I looked back at my brother, who had ignored my launch until my success threatened his image. You have 10 seconds to leave this floor, I said, or I'll ask security to remove you. His expression changed from shock to anger so quickly it confirmed everything I needed to know. You'll regret humiliating me, he said. I opened the conference room door. No, Brian, I regret believing you would ever clap unless the spotlight was yours. When I returned to the table, I expected the room to feel colder. Instead, Marcus slid a glass of water toward me and said, "Take your time." I took one sip, placed my folder in front of me, and did something I had never done in any room where my family's shadow followed me. I told the truth. Not the dramatic version, not the wounded version, the useful version. My family is not involved in ClearPath living, I said. They have never invested capital, labor, contacts, or strategy. I built this company from client work, grant money, personal savings, and community referrals. If your interest depends on a family brand story, this is not the right partnership. David leaned back. Elena's face softened slightly. Marcus nodded once. Our interest depends on you knowing exactly what belongs to you, he said. That sentence settled into me like a door locking from the inside. For the next hour, the meeting became more intense. Not less. They asked about scaling without diluting service quality. They asked whether I could hire operations support. They asked whether I would consider a minority investment instead of giving away control. That last question made me sit straighter. I won't give away control, I said. ClearPath exists because vulnerable people are often pressured by people who claim to know what's best for them. I won't build a company about independence by surrendering mine at the first check. Elena smiled for the first time. Good answer. By the end of the meeting, they did not offer a fantasy. They offered a conditional term sheet, $600,000 for a minority stake, phased over 18 months, tied to hiring, training, and service milestones. It was not a lottery ticket. It was better. It was grown-up money with grown-up expectations, and I was ready for both. As I signed the acknowledgement to begin due diligence, my phone kept flashing in my bag. Mom, Brian. Mom. Unknown number. Aunt Carol. A text from Mom finally appeared across the screen. Do not embarrass this family. Brian says you made a scene. I looked at the words and felt something inside me go very still. There are moments when anger burns hot, and moments when it becomes a clean, cold line. Mine became a line. After the meeting, Marcus walked me to the elevator. You handled that well? He said. I shook my head. I handled it late. He didn't pretend not to understand. Sometimes late is still on time. Downstairs, Brian was waiting near the lobby, pacing like a man rehearsing an apology he had no intention of meaning. When he saw me, he rushed forward. "What did you tell them?" "The truth." "Haley, you don't understand what you're doing. Mom already posted about it." "Posted what?" He froze. I opened social media and found my mother's profile at the top of my notifications. There was a photo of Brian at his poker table, arm around Mom, with a caption that made my hands go numb. "So proud of my children tonight." Brian has been advising his sister on her new senior care business, and investors are already interested. Family teamwork wins again. Family teamwork. Under the post, people were congratulating Brian. Some were asking if he was accepting clients. One of his poker friends had written, "Parker Family Empire incoming." I looked up at him. "Take it down." He rubbed his jaw. "It's already out there. Taking it down makes it look weird." "It is weird." "No, what's weird is you acting like success means cutting off the people who raised you." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You skipped my launch. It was one night. It was my night. And now you have investors, so what are you still mad about?" That question told me everything. He thought money erased disrespect. He thought opportunity was a bandage he could slap over absence. He thought the moment I received validation from someone important, I should stop caring that my own family had refused to witness me before I became useful. "I'm not mad because you missed a party," I said. "I'm mad because you only saw my company when it became something you could attach your name to." Brian's eyes narrowed. "You always do this. You make everything about your feelings." "No," I said. "Today I'm making it about facts." Then I walked past him and drove back to Clearpath, where the reserved family sign was still sitting on the table from the night before. I picked it up, folded it in half, and dropped it in the trash. By evening, the post had spread farther than I expected. Not viral, exactly, but close enough in our town to be dangerous. People tagged Brian in comments asking about consultations. One local realtor messaged him publicly, saying she had 2 clients looking for accessibility upgrades. A county council member congratulated the Parker siblings. My mother replied to nearly every comment with heart emojis, as if she had not spent the launch night across town praising Brian's poker strategy. I waited until my breathing slowed, then posted from the official Clearpath Living page. I did not insult anyone. I did not tell the whole ugly story. I wrote one clean statement. Clearpath Living was founded and is solely owned by Haley Parker. We are grateful for community support and excited about upcoming growth discussions. At this time, no family members serve as advisors, investors, employees, contractors, or representatives of the company. I read it 5 times, removed the sentence that said, "Despite what you may have heard," and posted it. Within minutes, my mother called. I answered on speaker while standing in the showroom beneath the motion sensor lights I had installed myself. "How could you?" she demanded. No hello, no apology, just accusation, like always. How could I clarify ownership of my own company? "You humiliated your brother." Brian humiliated himself by claiming a role he didn't have. He was trying to help you. He was trying to borrow my credibility. Her voice sharpened. "You have become cold." That word almost worked. It had worked on me for years. Cold meant ungrateful. Cold meant selfish. Cold meant I had failed at being the daughter who absorbed every insult and still brought dessert to Thanksgiving. But that night, the word missed me. "No, Mom," I said. "I have become specific." She went quiet. I continued, because some truths only come once. "You chose Brian's poker night over my launch. You let him claim my work in front of people who might become clients. Then when investors showed interest, you called me 76 times, not to apologize, but to manage the benefit." "That is not fair," she said, but her voice was smaller now. Fair would have been 12 family members sitting in the seats I saved. Fair would have been one person asking how the night went before asking what the money meant. Fair would have been you telling Brian to be proud of me instead of pretending he built what he ignored. She began to cry, softly at first, then louder. A year earlier, I would have folded. I would have apologized for making her emotional. I would have comforted her for hurting me. But I had clients who cried because they could finally shower safely. I had caregivers who cried because their parents could move through a hallway without fear. I knew the difference between pain that deserved care and guilt that wanted control. "Haley," she whispered, "we need you tomorrow." I closed my eyes. There it was. The sentence from the title of my life. They needed me, not loved me, not respected me, needed me. For what? I asked. She hesitated. Brian met a man last night who said he could connect us with senior housing investors. Brian told him we had a family company. He signed a preliminary referral agreement. Nothing serious, but now the man wants proof Brian is authorized. If we don't provide it by noon, it could look bad. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my chest. Did Brian sign my company's name? He didn't mean anything by it. Did he sign my company's name? He wrote ClearPath Parker Group. That is not my company. But it sounds connected enough that people understood. My hand tightened around the phone. This was no longer emotional. This was legal. "Send me the document," I said. "Oh, thank God, I knew you'd help." I didn't say I would help. I said send me the document. 10 minutes later, the PDF arrived. Brian had not only implied he represented my company, he had promised discounted installation packages to a private senior housing developer in exchange for strategic referral consideration. He had used my launch, my name, and my credibility as poker night currency. I forwarded the document to my attorney, a woman named Dana Miller, who had helped me form the LLC. Then I sent one message to Brian, Mom, and the developer. Brian Parker has no authority to represent ClearPath Living. Any agreement made under that assumption is invalid. All future communication must go through counsel. Brian called immediately. I declined. He called again. I declined again. Then came the text. "You're destroying me over a misunderstanding." I typed back, "No, I'm refusing to let you destroy me with one." That was the moment the revenge stopped being loud in my imagination and became quiet in real life. I didn't scream. I didn't beg them to understand. I let the truth travel with documents attached. The next morning, the consequences arrived faster than anyone expected. The developer Brian had tried to impress was not some harmless poker buddy with money to waste. He was connected to 2 local assisted living projects and 1 county review board. By 10, he had withdrawn from Brian's proposed referral partnership. By 11, he had emailed Marcus's office asking whether ClearPath Living had any relationship with Brian Parker or the so-called Parker Group. By noon, Dana had sent a formal cease and desist letter that was polite enough to be professional and sharp enough to leave bruises. My mother called 17 times. Brian sent texts that moved through the entire emotional menu: anger, guilt, nostalgia, threat, apology, then back to anger. "You're choosing strangers over blood. Dad would be ashamed. Mom hasn't stopped crying. I made one mistake. You think you're better than us now. Please, Haley, I'm losing everything." That last one made me pause. Not because I felt responsible, but because I finally understood how often they had confused consequences with cruelty. Brian was not losing everything because I told the truth. He was losing the fake version of himself that required my silence to survive. That afternoon, a local business blogger who had attended my launch posted a recap of the event. She wrote about the technology, the need for aging-in-place services, and the investor interest. Then, without naming my family directly, she added one sentence that spread quickly. The founder gave her presentation with grace despite a reserved family table that remained empty all night. People noticed. They connected it with my ownership statement. They connected it with my mother's deleted post. In a town where everyone pretended not to gossip while gossiping constantly, the story took on a life of its own. Aunt Carol texted, "Your mother is devastated. You should fix this." I replied, "I didn't break it." 3 words. Then I blocked her for the day. 2 days later, Marcus called to confirm that due diligence would continue. "There may be noise," he said, "but your response has been clear and professional." "Does the family drama worry you?" I asked. "No," he said. "How a founder protects boundaries tells us a lot." I stood in the showroom, looking at the demo bedroom where I had installed soft floor sensors that could detect a fall without cameras. Boundaries. That word had once sounded harsh to me, like a locked door. Now it sounded like architecture. A safe home needed boundaries. A safe life did too. The following Friday, I held a second open house for clients who had missed the launch. This time, I did not reserve a family table. I reserved seats for Mrs. Alvarez, 2 caregivers from the rehab clinic, Dana, and the retired contractor who had taught me how to read building codes when nobody took me seriously. They came early. They helped set up. They asked what I needed. That was the difference. People who love you do not wait for your success to become visible before deciding you deserve a chair. Halfway through the event, my mother walked in. Brian was behind her, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. For a second, the whole room blurred. Old Haley would have rushed over, smoothing the awkwardness, protecting them from the discomfort they had created. New Haley stayed where she was. My mother approached with red eyes and clasped hands. "Can we talk privately?" she asked. "No," I said calmly. "But you can say what you came to say." She glanced around, horrified by the idea of public honesty. Brian stared at the floor. "Haley," she began, "I'm sorry we missed your launch." I waited. She swallowed. "And I'm sorry I made it about Brian afterward." I still waited. Her lips trembled. "And I'm sorry I posted something that wasn't true." The room was quiet enough to hear the automatic door sensor chime behind a new guest. Brian finally looked up. "I shouldn't have signed anything connected to your company," he said. I was embarrassed. "Everyone thought you were doing something big, and I wanted to look like I was part of it." It was the first honest thing he had said in years. I wanted it to heal more than it did. But honesty is not a time machine. It does not refill empty chairs. It does not unsend documents. It does not turn years of being second choice into one clean apology. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "But you are not part of ClearPath, and I'm not available to repair your reputation." My mother's face crumpled. "So what does that mean for us?" I took a breath. The old answer would have been whatever keeps everyone calm. The new answer was the truth. It means you can rebuild a relationship with me slowly, without access to my business, my contacts, or my money. It means no more using family as a password to my life. It means if you want to know me, you start by respecting what I built before asking what it can do for you. Brian opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, he had no winning hand. They left 10 minutes later without a scene, and maybe that was the most surprising part. Not because they had changed completely, but because I had. I no longer needed them to understand everything before I protected myself. That evening, after the open house ended, I stood alone in the showroom again. But this time, the empty chairs did not hurt. They were just chairs. The people who mattered had already sat in them. Marcus's investment eventually came through, not as a miracle, but as a partnership I earned. ClearPath expanded into 2 counties in the first year. We hired 3 installers, one client coordinator, and a retired nurse as a safety consultant. My mother sent occasional messages that did not ask for favors. Brian took down every false reference to my company and, for the first time in his life, had to explain himself without me softening the story. Some people called that revenge. Maybe it was. But to me, the real revenge was not watching them panic, or seeing Brian lose the deal he tried to steal with my name. The real revenge was waking up every day without asking permission to be proud of myself. The lesson I learned is this: family can be a beautiful support system, but only when love includes respect, honesty, and accountability. Education does not only come from school or books. Sometimes the most useful knowledge comes from learning when to set boundaries, when to protect your work, and when to stop confusing being needed with being valued. A good life is not built by chasing applause from people committed to misunderstanding you. It is built by choosing integrity when others choose convenience, and by remembering that your dream does not become real only when your family finally notices it. It becomes real the moment you keep building, even when the seats you saved remain empty. So if you were in my place, would you forgive them right away, or would you make them earn a place back in your life, one honest action at a time?